Good afternoon. Welcome to the Analyst. Today we'll be taking up 7 newspaper articles from the Hindu and the Indian Express and discussing them. The handout for the same will be available in the description of this video for your kind perusal. Please have a look at that. The first article that we'll take up is related to unemployment, as it continues to be a concern for the Indian economy. The second article is related to death penalty, as there are calls to inflict the capital punishment upon the convict in the R.G. Kar case. Additionally, we'll take up 5 articles in the simplified, which will be useful for your prelims and mains preparation. Now, the first article is related to unemployment. 3 articles have appeared in the Hindu and the Indian Express regarding unemployment. One is regarding the joblessness in Delhi, another regarding the jobs crisis in Bangladesh, and yet another regarding the uncertainty around the H-1B visas, which the USA grants to the Indian working professionals, and it might actually fuel the jobs creation in India. So we will discuss the challenges around the unemployment and the strategies adopted to counter it. This is important in GS3 under the topic Indian economy and issues related to planning, mobilization of resources, growth, development and employment. So what is unemployment? In layman's terms, unemployment means being out of a job. The International Labour Organization ILO defines a person to be unemployed if he is out of a job and he is available to take up a job and he is actively engaged in the search for the work. To gauge unemployment in an economy, various parameters are defined. The Periodic Labour Force Survey, which is brought out by the Ministry of Statistics and Program Implementation, comes up with various parameters to gauge unemployment. One, there is the unemployment rate. The unemployment rate is defined by the ratio of the total number of unemployed people in the economy to the total labour force in the economy, the civilian labour force. That is, the labour force accounts for both the employed plus the unemployed people in the economy. Then there is the labor force participation rate. The labor force participation rate is defined by the labor force in the economy to the working age population in the economy. The labor force accounts for both the people who are employed in the economy plus those who are willing to work in the economy. Then there is the worker population ratio. The worker population ratio is defined as the ratio between the workforce in the economy to the working age population in the economy. The workforce includes only those people who are actively engaged in work, who are actively employed in the economy. It does not include those who are also willing to work in the economy. Then there is the payroll data, which is borrowed from the EPFO, the Employee Provident Fund Organization. From there also we can gauge the unemployment. When we look at the payroll data of EPFO, in the past 8 years, more than 7 crore net subscribers have joined, which indicates a kind of decrease in unemployment in the formal sector in the economy. Now when we look at the data of the Periodic Labour Force Survey of the past 2 years, we can observe that the unemployment rate in the urban areas for the males have come down from 7.7% to 6.1%. Likewise, the unemployment rate in the urban areas for females has also come down from 10% to 8.5%. Likewise, the indicators of the worker population ratio and the labor force participation rate are positive. The worker population ratio has improved from 67% to 69.8% for the males in the urban areas. For the females also, there has been an improvement from 18% to 23% in the urban areas. Likewise, the labor force participation rate has improved from 73% to 74%, and for the females also it has increased from 20% to 25% in the past 2 years in the urban areas. But there are data which are published from the other sources also. For example, the Forbes, this data is from Forbes. Forbes claims that the unemployment in India has been higher in the COVID and the post-COVID years. In the pre-COVID era, the unemployment rate was approximately 5.5% consistently. whereas in the COVID years it went up to 8%, and it is claimed to be around 9% actually in 2024. This is the data from Forbes. The Center for Monitoring Indian Economy has highlighted another fact, that the unemployment in the age group of less than 24 years is disproportionately high as compared to the total unemployment rate. Likewise, when we look at the labor force participation rate for women, it is one of the lowest across the world. India ranks at the 165th position out of 187 countries in terms of the female labor force participation rate. The female labor force participation rate in India is around 32.7% as per the World Bank data. Now let's look at some basics also. What are the types of unemployment before coming to the challenges? The unemployment can be cyclical in nature, which means that at that time there is no demand for that kind of work in the economy, and there becomes an cyclical unemployment. The unemployment can be frictional also. The frictional unemployment is the unemployment that an individual faces when he leaves a job and he is searching for another job. Then it is frictional unemployment. The unemployment can be seasonal as well, because certain sectors in the economy, they require work in certain seasons only. For example, agriculture requires agriculture labor during certain seasons only. The unemployment can be structural as well. When the economy is going through a structural transition, then it requires a different skill set, and often there is a mismatch of skills which is required and the skills which are available in the workforce, which leads to structural unemployment. The unemployment can be in the form of underemployment as well. The underemployment is a situation when the persons have high skill sets, but they are employed in low skill jobs. They are getting lower wages as compared to the skills that they possess. Therefore, the quality of employment is poor. That condition is underemployment. The unemployment can be in the form of disguised employment as well. The disguised employment is a situation when an individual is employed in a sector of the economy, but whether he is present or absent in his job does not make a difference to the output of the economy in that sector. Therefore, it is disguised employment. Now, when we look at the nature of unemployment in India, we can observe a few trends. For example, we can see a trend of ruralization. In 2000s, the percentage of people who were involved in agriculture was about 60%. Whereas around 2018, this number dropped to 42%. That is, the percentage of people who were employed in agriculture were about 42%. Now, last month, a report was published by Systematics, which has highlighted that in 2024, the percentage of people employed in agriculture has gone up to 46%. So earlier there was a trend of the people shifting from agriculture to the non-farm activities. There was a transition from agriculture to the services. But now there is a slow reversal also of that trend, which can be seen where the people are shifting towards agriculture activities in the rural areas, and it leads to a ruralization. Another trend is in the form of masculinization. That is, there is a drop in the number of females who are participating actively in the labor force, and there is a masculinization of the labor force. Another trend is observed in the form of casualization. That is, the number of jobs which are in the formal sector, which are the formal jobs, has come down, and there are more number of casual jobs, and an informalization happens in the economy because about 90% of the workforce is involved in the informal sector of the economy. Now, what are the challenges regarding unemployment in India which are peculiar to the Indian economy? An India Employment Report 2024 was published by the International Labour Organization. It has highlighted a few challenges. One of them is there is a rising unemployment among the educated youth. For example, we can compare the cases of Kerala and Gujarat. In Kerala, 30% of the labor force are graduates, whereas in Gujarat, 14% of the labor force are graduates. But Kerala still suffers from a high unemployment rate. Therefore, the notion that education will translate to skills is flawed. Therefore, higher education does not necessarily mean better skills, higher skills. We can also observe that the percentage of the youth who are having secondary or higher level of education, their proportion in the total number of unemployed has increased from 2000 to 2022. In 2000, the percentage was about 54% out of the total unemployed population, and now it is 65%. Another challenge is in the form of the stunted structural transformation. The Indian economy transformed from the agriculture based economy to a service based economy. So the manufacturing sector was missing in the growth story. And we observed that the non-farm employment, it dropped from the 60% to the 42% by 2018-2019, and it is again growing. Likewise, the manufacturing sector, it has remained stagnant in terms of the jobs growth. It accounts for the same about 12 to 14% of the employment. When we look at the employment quality, again there are challenges as the low skills jobs, they have come down. For example, we can observe from the report that the unskilled or the no skilled jobs, their percentage has come down from 34% in 2000 to 25% in 2022. Additionally, there is an informalization also, as about 90% of India's workforce is employed in the informal sector. Plus, the report observes that we have a peculiar problem of a youth bulge in the eastern and central India. The parameters, the social indicators in the eastern and central India regarding the per capita income, regarding the education levels among the youth are lower than the rest of the India, including the North India, South India and the western parts of India. Therefore, it gives up another challenge. Then there is the challenge of socio-economic hierarchies and the effectiveness of the affirmative actions. The affirmative actions are taken up by the government to ensure that the weaker, the vulnerable sections, the scheduled castes and scheduled tribes, they also have an equitable platform to grow, to participate. But the targeted policies which are there, their effectiveness has also been questioned. Likewise, with technology, the unemployment rate may rise, as there are arguments that the invent of the artificial intelligence may again cause disruptions. Now, what are the steps that the government has taken to promote employment generation in India? One, the government came up with the Prime Minister Employment Generation Program. It is a credit-linked subsidy scheme. It is implemented by the Khadi and Village Industries Commission, a central sector scheme. Then we have the Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Scheme, which provides for the 100 days unskilled work, a guaranteed work. It is a demand-based, demand-driven scheme where anybody can go and seek work. Then there is the Deen Dayal Upadhyaya Gramin Kaushalya Yojana. This is under the National Rural Livelihoods Mission to promote employment generation. There is the Deen Dayal Antyodaya Yojana under the National Urban Livelihoods Mission as well, which promotes the self-employment as well as the skilled jobs creation. The Prime Minister Mudra Yojana gives credit to the MSMEs, the micro, small and medium enterprises, to ensure that they can also create jobs. The rural self-employment and training institutes are set up. These institutes are run by the banks and the support of the state governments is also given. There is the scheme Support for the Marginalized Individuals for Livelihood and Enterprise, that is the SMILE scheme. It has two schemes subsumed under it, that is one each for the transgenders and the beggars. The rehabilitation provisions for both of them are included. The government came up with the Startup India as well. The Startup India provides the funds also. For example, under the Startup India Seed Fund program, 5 crore rupees are given to the eligible incubators so that they can further give money to the startups and the jobs can be created. Likewise, Rozgar Melas are promoted by the government to encourage employment generation. The government also came up with the Atmanirbhar Bharat Rozgar Yojana during the times of COVID. Under this scheme, the government gives both the employees' contribution and the employers' contribution of 12% each for the Provident Fund so that the employers can be incentivized to create more jobs. There are certain suggestions also which have been proposed by the Confederation of Indian Industry which can be included in the upcoming budget. They include that the government can go for an integrated national employment policy. This national employment policy can subsume all the existing schemes related to employment generation, and it can be a build up upon the National Career Service portal through which the policy can function. Likewise, the government can come up with an internship program in the rural government offices. It will achieve the twin objectives. It will provide the short-term employment for the youth, where they will become employable, they will learn new skills, plus it will help in the implementation of the schemes in the rural areas. The Confederation also proposes tax incentives for the job creation and the boosting of the female labor force participation rate. There can be specific steps that the government can take to boost the female labor force participation rate. For example, the government supported creches can be established in the industrial clusters. The care economy can be formalized by the government. A social security net should be provided for the gig workers, the platform workers, etc. And the government can explore setting up an international mobility authority, because there will be global workforce shortages in the countries which are experiencing an aging population. They will be needed workforce. If the government of India provides for the skills upgradation, the learnings of the foreign languages for the Indian youth, and it goes for a collaboration, a government to government collaboration with the other countries, then we can support the workforce which is required in the other countries as well. And the jobs which may be outsourced from the other countries which are facing a workforce shortage, they will be outsourced to India. For example, the H-1B visas which are not given as frequently to the Indians now, the jobs which will be outsourced to the other countries, they will be coming to India, and the service sector exports will grow. Likewise, we can explore setting up an expert committee on the productivity as well. Now there is a means practice question as well. Unemployment remains one of the most pressing challenges facing the Indian economy. Analyze the key factors contributing to unemployment in India and suggest policy measures that could effectively address this issue while promoting inclusive growth. Please try to write it. Now the next article is related to death penalty. The context behind it is that a write-up appeared in the Indian Express, and there are calls for the inflicting of capital punishment upon the convict in the R.G. Kar case. So we will understand the arguments against death penalty, the world view regarding death penalty, and the opinions of the judiciary upon the inflicting of capital punishment in India. This is important in GS2 under the topic Important Aspects of Governance. Now first let's have a look at the world view regarding the capital punishment. When we look at USA, the total number of states which have been conducting executions each year, it has been coming down in the past couple of decades from 2003 to 2023. And when we look at the countries with the highest number of executions in 2022, the maximum number of executions are supposed to be from China, although the exact data is not available. These are the claims of the Amnesty International. And then we can observe that major number of executions have been conducted in Iran, Saudi Arabia, Egypt, that is the West Asian region. The other countries, they are on a trend towards the abolition of death penalty. Now, what are the arguments against the capital punishment? The Indian criminal jurisprudence is based upon the philosophy of reformative justice, not retributive justice. That is, we want to afford the criminals also a chance to reform, a chance to reintegrate into the society. We don't want to go for a retributive justice. The nature of the capital punishment is such that there is no chance for reform left. It is a kind of retribution because we are inflicting the capital punishment, we are inflicting a revenge upon the convict in the case. And it is an antithesis to one's right to life as well, because the life once taken away can't be brought back. When we look at it philosophically, it is against the Kantian perspective as well, because Immanuel Kant says that human beings should be treated as an end in themselves. The human beings should not be used as a means to achieve an end. when we are inflicting capital punishment, the supposed end to ensure that the crime comes down in the society, that we create a deterrence in the society, we achieve a crime-free society. That is the supposed end. But we are using a human beings as a means. We are killing a human being to ensure a crime-free society. Therefore, using a human being as a means to achieve an end is against the Kantian perspective also. When we look at the point of view of Albert Camus, again, it is against the very basic human solidarity. Because as per Camus, we have a very basic solidarity, the solidarity against death, and the capital punishment upsets that basic human solidarity. Likewise, we have to observe the legislative intention behind the provision of capital punishment. Section 354 subclause 3 of the Criminal Procedure Code provides that when the judiciary chooses capital punishment in a case, because the judiciary can prescribe capital punishment or it can prescribe life imprisonment in a case. So when the judiciary chooses capital punishment, it has to record the reasons in writing. So that shows the legislative intention that the nature of this punishment is that it is irreversible and it has to be exercised cautiously. But still the judiciary is fallible. The judiciary can also make mistakes, although there are cures which are available. For example, the mercy petitions can be filed in front of the president, but still the nature of the punishment makes it a case that it should be abolished. Then the argument that it will create deterrence is also flawed. For example, in USA, there is some evidence which suggests that the states with capital punishment, there the murder rates are actually higher, because the accused, he thinks that he might actually go scot-free if there are no witnesses in such a case. And by abolishing the death penalty, we will achieve a moral high ground. Because in a mature, evolved democracy, the capital punishment should not be there, as it is seen to be amounting to even murder in the civilized democracies. Plus, it will be as per the international human rights standards which have evolved. For example, 88% of the criminologists do not believe that the death penalty is an effective deterrent. And there is a myopic point of view also, that the death penalty, it will be cost effective, but actually it is not. Rather, there will be lengthy appeals, the lengthy litigation procedures which are further available for the convicts, which will again cause a burden on the public exchequer. Plus, the long periods in the confines which are spent by the death row convicts, they have shown that they develop mental health issues, and the aging death row population requires more and more care as they become elderly. Now, what are the opinions of the judiciary in the capital punishment? In the Jagmohan Singh versus State of Uttar Pradesh case, the court held that the penalty of capital punishment is valid. It is not violative of Articles 14, 19 and 21, the Golden Trinity of Rights, and it should be inflicted only as per the procedure established by law. That is, the judge, while ordering capital punishment, has to look at the circumstances of the case and the nature of the crime committed. Whereas in the Rajendra Prasad versus State of Uttar Pradesh, the judiciary took a different opinion. It observed that the death penalty, it is violative of the Articles 14, 19 and 21. And the judiciary observed that two things are must whenever the capital punishment is awarded. That is, the special reasons under section 354 subclause 3 of CRPC have to be recorded, and it has to be awarded only in the extraordinary circumstances. Finally, in the Bachchan Singh case, in Bachchan Singh versus State of Punjab, the court held that the Rajendra Prasad ratio is not valid, and the capital punishment can be used as an alternative punishment for murder. It will not be unreasonable, but we will be using it in the rarest of rare cases. The principle of rarest of rare cases was enunciated through the Bachchan Singh case, and the court should also consider the mitigating and aggravating factors in such circumstances, that is, the factors which are in favor and which are against the convict. In Machi Singh versus State of Punjab, the court also gave 5 categories in which the capital punishment can be awarded. They include the manner of commission of murder. If the manner of commission of murder was brutal, then capital punishment can be awarded. The motive also has to be seen. If the motive evinces depravity, meanness, then the capital punishment can be awarded. If the nature of crime is antisocial or it is a socially abhorrent crime, then also it can be awarded. For example, the crimes against minority, the crimes against the scheduled caste or scheduled tribes. We have to look at the magnitude of the crime as well. For example, if there are murders of multiple members of a family, then the crime is a grave crime, then the death penalty can be awarded. The personality of victim also has to be taken into account. So these are some of the guidelines which were given in the Machi Singh case. Then the form of capital punishment was also challenged, that it is unconstitutional, it is inhuman to award death penalty by hanging. But in Dina versus Union of India, the court said that it is actually an inhuman exercise, but it is as per law and it is valid. Then in Mithu versus State of Punjab, the section 303 of the IPC was struck down. The section 303 of the Indian Penal Code provided that the death penalty will be the only punishment in case there is a convict who is already undergoing life imprisonment and he commits a murder. But if death penalty is the only penalty which is prescribed for any crime, it will be unconstitutional because it takes away the discretion of the judiciary to utilize its knowledge, to utilize its mind when the factors of the case are not at all considered. Because there will be some mitigating factors, there will be some aggravating factors in a case, and if they are not considered and there is only one punishment which is prescribed, then it is unconstitutional. Therefore, section 303 of the IPC was struck down. Now there is a mains practice question as well. Globally, there has been a significant decline in the use of the death penalty, with many countries moving towards abolition. Analyze the arguments against the death penalty and discuss the key judicial decisions in India that have shaped its application. Please try to write it. Now, the next article is related to Netaji Subhas Chandra Bose, as a write-up has appeared in the Indian Express regarding Netaji Subhas Chandra Bose. This is important in GS1 under the topic Modern Indian History, Significant Events and Personalities. Before coming to the article, let's learn a few things regarding Netaji Subhas Chandra Bose. He cleared the Indian Civil Service exam and secured 4th position in it, but he resigned soon after that in 1921 itself. Although he was working as the CEO of the Calcutta Municipal Corporation as well in 1923-24, and later on he was elected as the mayor of Calcutta while he was in jail in 1930. His political guru was Chittaranjan Das. When we look at his political views, he was opposed to the views of Gandhi. Gandhiji used to advocate non-violence, but Subhash Chandra Bose disagreed with him and advocated that only non-violence may not be able to get independence for India. He advocated the use of force, the use of violence as well. Therefore, he was a non-pacifist. When he was working as the president of the INC and he disagreed with Gandhiji, he resigned from the presidentship of INC and set up his forward bloc as well. And he was in favor of complete independence. Therefore, his philosophy was that of anti-imperialism and he wanted nothing less than complete independence. He was also in favor of the socialism and the setting of the economy should be socialist in nature, and he advocated secularism as well, that is equal place for all religions in a free India. He also was a part of the anti-compromise conference. It was convened by Subhash Chandra Bose in March 1940. It was a joint effort by the forward bloc which was set up by Subhash Chandra Bose and Kisan Sabha. He also argued through the anti-compromise conference that we can go for the international collaboration. We should seek the support of the other countries also against the British. Therefore, he left India for getting external support in the struggle for India's independence. In 1941, he escaped from his house arrest and under disguise he left India. He reached Peshawar in 1941. He was using a pseudonym of Ziauddin and he was helped by Bhagat Ram in his escape. Initially, he tried to seek the Russian help, but the Russians disappointed him as They helped the Allies later on. And then he moved to Germany. In Germany, he met Hitler using again a pseudonym Orlando Mazzotta. In Germany, he formed a freedom army. A freedom army, that is Mukti Sena. This army was formed with the support of the prisoner of wars. The prisoner of wars who were captured by Germany, Italy, etc. And the headquarters of the freedom army were formed in Dresden in Germany. There he popularized the slogan Jai Hind. Meanwhile, he was also conducting regular broadcasts from the Berlin radio while he was in Germany. But in 1943, he used the German submarines and escaped from there, and he reached Japan in 1943 and later on to Singapore also. After reaching there, he took over the command of the Indian National Army from the Rash Bihari Bose. Now, coming to the article, Netaji died on August 18, 1945 after a plane crash in Taipei. And after his crash, his remains were taken to Tokyo, where they are still kept. They were taken there by the Indian community in exile. They are still kept in an urn at the Renkoji temple in Tokyo, and they were taken there by hiding them from the US forces. Even today, their remains, they are still honored at the Renkoji temple. There were speculations, there were investigations regarding Netaji's death. There were multiple theories about his death or escape after the crash. The investigations which were done by the government of India, they were kept classified for decades. They were not kept in the open domain. 3 Indian inquiries were set up in 1956, 79 and 99. There were 10 reports which confirmed Netaji's death in 1945. But there was one commission, Justice Mukherjee Commission, whose report was inconclusive. And arguably there were some flaws, some mistakes, some assumptions in the report of Justice Mukherjee Commission, and therefore it was rejected by the government. Now there are attempts to return the remains of Netaji Subhas Bose from Japan to India. The Japanese government and the admirers of Netaji, they want the remains to be returned to India. Earlier, the P.V. Narasimha Rao and Pranab Mukherjee initiated the return in 1990s, but they were not able to as the government fell soon after. And the Justice Mukherjee Commission report, which was set up in 1999, was not accepted by the government. But then the documents were declassified by the Modi government and the Mamata Banerjee, who declassified the final documents as well, and the evidence is overwhelmingly in support of Netaji's death in 1945, and no conspiracy was found in the declassified documents. Now, the next article is related to the tariffs which are proposed to be imposed by the President of USA. This is important in GS2 under the topic Effect of Policies and Politics of Developed and Developing Countries on India's Interests. During the campaign, the President of USA had threatened to impose tariffs on the other countries. The tariffs to boost the domestic manufacturing in USA. He was threatening China particularly that he will be imposing 60% tariffs on the Chinese goods. He even threatened the BRICS nations as well, saying that he will be imposing 100% tariffs on the BRICS countries if they try to undermine dollar. That is, if they try to use other countries instead of dollar in their bilateral or multilateral trades. So what are tariffs first thing? Tariffs are the taxes on the imported goods. For example, cars. If tariffs are imposed upon the imported goods, then the imported goods will become costly and the locally produced goods will be cheaper. Therefore, the consumers will naturally be buying the locally produced goods. Therefore, the domestic industry will be promoted, the local employment creation will be promoted, and it will be helping in the growth of the domestic economy. This is the logic behind this. And the implication of import is also that it leads to a loss for the US manufacturers, because the consumers, they will naturally be buying the cheaper alternatives, and it will also cause a rising trade deficit, and the goods for the consumers are cheaper. But what are the reasons for imposing tariffs? One, it is to protect the domestic industries. Second, it also acts as a revenue source for the government, as through imposition of tariffs, the government collects revenue, and if it keeps moderate tariff rates, then it leads to revenue growth. But if too high tariff rates are imposed, then again there will be reduction in imports and it will lead to the reduction in the revenue for the government. Plus it may be to encourage the foreign direct investment also, because if high tariffs are imposed on the final goods, then the foreign firms, they will be setting up factories in USA itself to produce locally in USA. Now, there can be retaliation to the tariffs which may be imposed by President Trump. How? It may lead to dumping. For example, the China can absorb the tariffs and it will sell even cheaper to drive out the US competitors. And once it drives out the US competitors, then it may have monopoly in certain segments. It may pass on the cost to the consumers also. And the consumers, if they still find the imported goods to be cheaper, they will still go for them. Or China may set up the factories in USA also. But it is highly unlikely because the production cost in China is quite low. And it is mainly because of the availability of cheap labor, whereas the labor costs in USA are quite high. It may lead to a rerouting of the trade also. For example, the importers will not be directly importing from China, they will be routing the goods through other countries with whom USA has a free trade agreement. For example, they can import via Mexico or via Canada. Or it may lead to a trade war as well. If China also retaliates with tariffs on the US goods, it may lead to a trade war. Or what if China goes for a devaluation of its currency? Now, what will be the impact of the tariffs? One, it will be hurting the domestic consumers because they are forced to buy the costly imported goods or the costly domestically produced goods which were not as viable. Therefore, they were buying the imported goods earlier. And the protectionist measures, they may lead to inflation. They may lead to the rise in the prices of the goods. And the domestic industries, they may actually benefit. Now, what has been the effectiveness of the tariffs in the past? When we look at the US-China trade, the imports from China fell. The trade deficit reduced. But the trade was rerouted through US-Mexico and US-Canada. For example, the imports increased from Mexico and Canada and the trade deficit grew there. And the US trade deficit in total grew from 500 billion in 2017 to more than 780 billion in 2023. Plus, China has shown its resilience. That is, the exports from China, they have actually grown. And it is still maintaining its role in the global supply chains because it is a manufacturing hegemon also. Now, the Mexico, Canada and the ASEAN nations, they have actually benefited from the trade war because sometimes the goods, they are rerouted through these countries. What is India's position in this case? India carries a risk of becoming a conduit for the Chinese goods to the USA. That is, again, the goods may be routed through India, and the Indian exporters, they need to leverage this opportunities which this trade war may present, and we need to add the domestic value as well. Now, the next article is related to the French influence in the West Africa. This is important in GS1 in world history. The French maintained troops and military bases in the West African region, and therefore it maintained influence over that region. Now it is declining. For example, the Ivory Coast president announced the withdrawal of the French troops from Ivory Coast. The military base that was there in Chad, that has also been handed over by France. Senegal has also called for the closure of the French military bases. The other countries who have joined the withdrawal request include Mali, Niger and Burkina Faso. Now, why are these countries requesting the French to withdraw their troops? The reasons include the sovereignty concerns. The national sovereignty is affected as these defense pacts, they are colonial era pacts when they needed security from the French, and therefore the Franc-Afrique was put in place. That is, the pacts as they are known, now there is no such need for the security. Plus there is an outcry from the side of the public, a public dissatisfaction while the governments there have failed to contain insurgency by using the French troops, and also there is a sentiment, an anti-French sentiment which has been rising in these countries. Plus these countries are seeking new partnerships now. The West African nations, they are diversifying their ties. They are now collaborating with other countries, especially Russia. Now, what are the implications of this withdrawal for the African countries? One, it will end the influence of France in the region. Two, they will be exploring new alliances. For example, there is a potential for the Chad, Senegal, and Ivory Coast to join the Sahel Alliance. The Sahel Alliance with Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso. Plus, it will present a counter-terrorism opportunity. That is, they will go for a regional cooperation to address the insurgencies with which the West Africa is infested. What will be the implications for France? Not very positive. It will lead to an end of the Franc-Afrique and the decline in the political and economic relations. Economic relations particularly, they will be difficult to maintain without the political backing. And the military reputation will also be undermined, because till now France was seen as a credible global security provider. This credibility will be lost now. Additionally, it will lead to a shift to the Russian influence. Now, instead of the French troops, there will be Russian mercenaries who will be functioning in the region. Not only the French influence, the larger European influence has also been declining in the region because of a competition from Russia and China. Russia will fill the military vacuum, it will put boots on the ground, and China will go for the economic influence. It will be giving loans and establishing infrastructure there, while the European Union struggle will continue as it is already going through an economic strain. Plus, it is focused more on the internal issues like the Ukraine war, the migration, illegal migration into Europe, and the autocratic governments in some countries. Likewise, the trade surplus that the European Union enjoyed, that is declining. It declined from 55 billion euro in 2022 to 35 billion euro in 2023. And the military coups in the region may actually increase because the EU provides funding to this region. When this funding is cut, it might lead to more instability in the region, which might further perpetuate the military coups. What will be Russia's role? It will be filling the military vacuum. It will be creating its own influence regions through troop deployments, and there might be a shift in the European foreign policy also, because the European foreign policy is going to become more inward looking, and it will be focusing on the border and migration issues rather than expanding of markets for itself. Now, the next article is related to the appointment of ad hoc judges in the high courts. This is important in GS2 under the topic Structure, Organization and Functioning of Executive and Judiciary. The Supreme Court has suggested that the retired judges should be appointed as ad hoc judges to address the backlog in the criminal cases which are pending in the high courts. The Article 224A under the Constitution allows the appointment of the retired judges of the high courts to function as the judges in the high courts as ad hoc judges. The Supreme Court has suggested to modify its own earlier ruling of 2021, as there were certain conditions which were proposed in the 2021 ruling of Lok Prahari versus Union of India regarding the appointments of the ad hoc judges in high courts. Now, what is the process of appointment of the ad hoc judges? Under Article 224A, the Chief Justice of the High Court requests a retired judge, and he requests with the consent of the President. The consent of both the President and the retired judge is needed for appointment of a retired judge as an ad hoc judge. The ad hoc judges, they have full judicial powers, but they are not considered permanent judges. The detailed procedure is mentioned in the Memorandum of Procedure of 1998. Now, the appointment procedure is such that the Chief Justice of the High Court will forward the appointment details to the Chief Minister. The Chief Minister will pass it on to the Union Law Minister. The Union Law Minister will consult the Chief Justice of India, and then he will be forwarding the recommendation to the Prime Minister. The Prime Minister will advise the President on the approval of the appointment of the retired judge as the ad hoc judge of the High Court. But through the Lok Prahari versus Union of India in 2021, the court said that the recommendations, they have to be routed through the Supreme Court's collegium. The collegium for this will be the Chief Justice of India and two senior most judges. Now, what are the conditions that were proposed in the Lok Prahari versus Union of India ruling in 2021, which the Supreme Court has proposed to modify now? One, that case proposed that there should be a trigger point for the appointments as ad hoc judges. That is, if there are more than 20% vacancies in a high court, then the ad hoc appointments can take place. Or out of the backlog, 10% of the backlog cases are pending for more than 5 years, then ad hoc appointments can be done. And the ad hoc appointments will be done for 2 to 3 years only. Each Chief Justice of the High Court should create a panel of the retired and soon to retire judges from which the ad hoc appointments can be done. Additionally, the High Courts, they should have 2 to 5 ad hoc judges per High Court, and there should be a periodic review as well of the ad hoc appointments. Now, the next article is related to Iron Age. This is important in GS1 under the topic Indian Culture, Salient Aspects of Art Forms, Literature and Architecture from Ancient to Modern Times. There was a report which has been published recently, Antiquity of Iron, Recent Radiometric Dates from Tamil Nadu. This report has highlighted that the iron was first introduced in Tamil Nadu in the first quarter of the 4th millennium BC, that is around 3345 BCE. The smelting of iron was introduced, and these findings have been discovered from Sivagalai site in Thoothukudi district in Tamil Nadu. Therefore, Tamil Nadu, it has displayed an independent culture with advanced technological skills ever since the 4th millennium BCE. These findings have been validated scientifically as well. They have been validated via multiple labs and research methods, including accelerator mass spectrometry and optically stimulated luminescence. Tamil Nadu achieved technological mastery in iron smelting because iron smelting requires the temperatures of 1200-1400 degrees Celsius, which indicates the usage of advanced technology, and the Tamil people mastered this skill more than 5,000 years ago. The context of it is important in agriculture, trade and the formation of the states, even the human evolution as well. The prior excavations which were conducted at Sivagalai, Adichanallur, the Kilnamandi, etc., they dated the iron introduction to between 2500 to 3000 BCE, but now the iron introduction is dated to 3300 BCE. The South India Iron Age is therefore earlier due to the limited copper availability in the region. Thank you.